Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with a severe weather outlook and discussion recorded on April 26, 2023, occurred on 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to jump into today, including two significant severe weather areas. So, starting off here with a wide look of the contiguous United States. First of all, we have a storm system developing out across portions of the plains today, and this is going to set the stage for a potential significant severe weather event and across portions of Texas today, and this will be spreading eastward with time as this low pressure area consolidates and heads generally off towards the east. A weak area of low pressure bringing with it some severe weather potential to the Gulf Coast states and Florida even over the next couple of days. Looking at the watch warning map so far today, it is pretty quiet. Not a whole lot of concerns out there, at least so far today. We have a few freeze watches out across portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and into the higher elevations of West Virginia. That is really it, though. A few winter weather concerns there in Colorado, but elsewise, it is pretty quiet, at least for this morning. However, it is not quiet in the severe weather world. We have two very significant threats shaping up for later this afternoon. We have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for portions of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and this includes a level 2 out of 5 slight risk, including places like Shreveport down through just to near the Red River. Marginal risk, level 1 out of 5, all the way into Mobile, Alabama. Pretty much all, or really all of Louisiana and central and southern Mississippi, including Jackson. And we also have a separate level 3 out of 5 risk. We can see right here, level 3 out of 5, enhanced risk for portions of the Orlando metro region, all the way down to near Palm Bay, Fort Myers, and West Palm Beach. This is, we'll talk about here in a minute, arguably a higher parameter space day in terms of large destructive hail than out here across portions of Texas today, but we'll talk about that here in just a second. So zooming in here on the Texas threat, we're going to go very quickly with this because we've already talked about this ad nauseum, so we're going to cover the Florida severe weather threat in a little bit more detail here, but we have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, a level 2 out of 5 slight risk for places like Shreveport, and a marginal level 1 out of 5 for places like Austin, Houston, and south of Oklahoma City. This includes a 10% tornado risk, an elevated area of tornado potential, even some significant tornadoes expected today, or possible rather, out across portions of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex later this afternoon. So it is very imperative that you have your severe weather preparedness plans ready to go, know what to do in case of a tornado, and if you live in any mobile homes or any trailer parks, where are you going to go? Because you cannot survive in a mobile home or a trailer park. You need to have some sturdy shelter. No matter what anyone says, mobile homes and trailer parks are not how you survive a tornado. I don't care what anyone says. All you need to do is just look at the damage for yourself of these places when even a weak EF1 tornado goes through that area, and it can upend and ruin a lot of lives. So it's imperative to have your severe weather preparedness plans ready, know where to go, and know where your shelters are. Level 2, and then we also have that 2%, almost said level, but we also have that 2% area covering all of really Louisiana, except for the northeastern part, Shreveport, Houston, Austin, 5% out here to just a little bit north of the DFW area. Looking at the HRRR forecast real briefly of a couple of elevated storms ongoing across the area right now. This will break down and allow for supercell development sometime by about 1 p.m. Central Time. And these supercells seem like it will keep just kind of propagating back towards the west and southwest for a little bit. Looking at a sounding from near the Dallas area, this is roughly about 23Z, so this is just after about 3 p.m. Central. Again, very strong curvature in the low levels, that veering with height there that we've talked about ad nauseum, that is going to allow for these thunderstorms to efficiently rotate. Temperature dew point spread is very close together, meaning our lifted condensation level, our cloud bases are going to be relatively low, just about 600 to near 700, which is more than sufficient for tornadoes. You need low cloud bases to support supercell tornadoes, and large amounts of instability and 3 Cape values that are approaching near 200, meaning that we have efficient stretching in the low levels to get ambient vorticity or spin in the atmosphere to be sucked up and ingested into those updrafts with some curvature in the low-level photographs. I mean, this isn't necessarily something you would see on a huge severe weather day, but anywhere near that warm frontal boundary that is going to be positioned near the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that's going to add just a little bit of curvature to those low-level photographs. And given that we have already decent shear and we also have a lot of shear in the mid and upper levels here, this is going to be more than supportive for supercells and the potential for a few tornadoes, a couple of which could be strong, potentially intense EF2 plus tornadoes, especially near the Dallas-Fort Worth area in that 10% vicinity. And this threat will then shape up to be more of a damaging wind and large hail threat as we transition into the overnight hours into the day tomorrow. So again, just to kind of recap, we have a potentially significant severe weather threat out across the Dallas-Fort Worth area today. Large hail damaging winds, but a threat for a few couple intense tornadoes possibly today. Again, slight risk down to near Shreveport. Again, the slight risk, especially on the eastern end, that is going to be mainly a wind and hail driven threat, but cannot rule out a few tornadoes all the way down here into Louisiana and all the way across the surrounding vicinity. So please make sure you have multiple ways to receive warnings today. Now, jumping to our other severe weather threat today, we have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for severe storms from about the Lake Orange County line back through the Orlando Metro. This includes all of the attractions down through near Daytona Beach, Palm Bay, and down to near Port St. Joe, also towards Port St. Lucie, the PSL area, as well as Melbourne, Brevard County, all the way down to near Lake Okeechobee. Level 2 out of 5, slight risk to from Miami all the way northward to the Interstate 95 corridor south, just a little bit south of Jacksonville, and a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk encompassing most of, if not all, of the Central Florida area. So what to expect generally for today? Well, first of all, tornado potential is 2%, so that means you have a 2% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of a given point. Now, we also know that from the previous days, if you've seen some of the time-lapse videos on the channel, we've had 2 supercells in the past 2 days, and one yesterday that almost dropped a tornado over in Lake County, which is generally, I accidentally exited that out, but generally speaking, which would have been in this area right in here. Now you can also see that there's a very significant hail probability today, 30%, which is greater, well greater than average for this time of year, but a 30% chance of seeing hail 1 inch in diameter or greater within 25 miles of a given point. Again, Lake Orange County line, Orlando Metro region, all of the attractions, Daytona Beach, southward to the Interstate 95 corridor down towards West Palm Beach area, 15% down to near Miami. Again, this is also going to include the threat for some very large hail. We have a separate 10 hatched probability in this vicinity through here, and that includes the potential to see hail events over 2.5 inches in diameter. So you have a separate 10% chance of seeing hail over 2.5 inches in diameter within 25 miles of a given point. This is a very significant risk. Again, this has been the first real risk that we've had for any significant severe weather in the past while. Certainly over the past year, we've not had many risks like this. We had a supercell yesterday over in Lake County that produced some very large hail, upwards of 3 inches in diameter, I do believe. And that was from a supercell. And like we were just talking about, it does not take much to get a supercell with the environment we're about to talk about today. And so there is that threat for tornadoes, very large hail, and yes, even some damaging winds, possibly upwards of 70 to 75 miles per hour. So we could be talking about near hurricane force winds within some of the stronger supercells and downdrafts today. Again, the wind potential is, wind and hail really is the highest potential, I think, for today. But I cannot rule out a tornado, especially towards the coast, and we'll talk about that here now. So looking at the overall dew point values, this is coming off of the current analysis as about 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Generally speaking, we have 55 dew points encompassing the entire Florida area. We have 65 dew points from near Tampa and Sumter County through the Interstate 75 corridor and up to near Jacksonville, and 70s dew points from near Cape Coral through portions of eastern Polk into Osceola counties, through the Orlando metro, and back through the coast and on the entire East Coast side. So what this basically means is that we have higher dew points out across this general area here in this purple color. And that also means that our cloud bases are going to be relatively lower because the higher dew point values indicate a more saturated low-level environment, meaning our cloud bases are going to be a lot lower to the ground. And that, while the cloud bases will go up a little bit as we get some of that warming and mixing throughout the day, these cloud bases should remain roughly in the 1,000-meter or less range, which does promote an increased tornado potential. We'll talk about that here in a second. Instability-wise, the instability is going to be more than sufficient today. Prolific instability across most of the entire Florida peninsula. Again, lesser values as you go further north, and only modest instability towards Jacksonville today. But the entire peninsula has strong to prolific instability today. We're talking over 2,000 mixed layer CAPE, which is more than sufficient for supercells and thunderstorms to develop. Combine that with some shear. Again, the shear is not particularly intense as we don't really have any low-level shear, especially because we don't have any cyclogenesis or a big digging trough out across this area. But we have some ambient shear. There is modest shear out across the coastal areas from about Orlando through Daytona Beach southward, kind of confined within that enhanced risk vicinity, with at least somewhat weak shear out across most of the entire part of the Florida peninsula, especially as you get away from the west coast and towards the interior. That's where your shear begins to increase. Now, if we actually look here at a observed sounding from Tampa, this is from 12Z or 8 a.m. this morning, we already noticed that we have instability aloft here. We notice that there is some capping here, and this is evident. Again, we have warming temperatures with height here. So what this actually does is this increases the potential that we have instability building down at the surface. And then, once that happens, we don't really have any thunderstorms developing here. But with any sort of warming, and we will see warming today because it's Florida in almost May and we're guaranteed to see warming, you're going to get an increase in the instability out across this area. Now, keep in mind, this is also removed from the better severe weather threat today, but this area is still under a marginal to slight risk for today. And so again, we're going to see warming and cooling aloft, which means we're going to steepen these lapse rates. We're already at 7.4 centimeters per kilometer right now, which means that we're also getting at least somewhat steep. We're going to be getting this steep lapse rate. We're going to cool it even further. Now, the hodograph is a little bit different, though, today. Again, not a lot of low-level shear, but you notice that the one thing that we do have, we have a very long shear vector out here in the mid and upper levels, and this is going to be very conducive for supercells. You can kind of already see you've got that low level, kind of the storm slinky here, kind of getting an indication of the parcel path for the clouds. And you notice that we start off kind of with the more southerly trajectory, and then it kind of wraps around, and that's how you're going to get more of your kind of little bean-shaped supercells today. Not exactly, but you can kind of get an idea of what these supercells might end up looking like, on radar, something to that effect. So again, something to this effect, you're going to see these supercells. They're going to be larger supercells today, but generally speaking, we do have a lot of veering in the low levels. You can see easterly winds here at the surface veering to more west or northwest winds here just above the surface at about 3 kilometers, indicates that we will have enough veering for those rotating updrafts to occur. Now, if we look at the model forecast, this is the 13Z so we notice that this is the latest run that is currently processing right now. We move it throughout the early morning. We see that there's virtually no convection, maybe a few storms out there in the intercoastal waterway. And by the way, these could be severe, so if you are, a mariner out there or have boating interest out there or know anyone that does, pay attention to this because these could be some very strong supercells as well, producing some very large hail and winds and potentially even water spouts. We start to see our first storm, signs of storm initiation by 17Z today. If we just look at a proximity sounding, this is roughly around the Orlando airport. We notice that, again, our LCLs are higher because, again, we have a larger temperature dew point spread. But we also notice that we have pretty good veering with height. Those wrap around, increasing flow in the mid and upper levels, and strong instability here. This is largely uncapped at about 17Z. So this is about 1 p.m., largely uncapped environment. Pretty long straight hodographs, so this will favor initially more of a large hail and potential damaging wind threat. We notice that if we can find it here, our decape values are just about 800, and decape values over 700 supports in more vigorous downbursts. So the potential for damaging winds there at the surface. We continue to move this forward. Again, not a lot of development through portions of early afternoon, but you notice those supercells offshore. And then we kind of see more rigorous development aided by some sea breeze interactions as well. But if we look here, this is roughly 23Z in Lake County. This is a little bit more of a wonky hodograph. I think that's probably related to the sea breeze passing. So we'll actually get a little closer to the coast. We notice that, again, strong veering here, generally speaking, which means that we're going to have increased flow in the upper levels. Again, cloud layer shear is going to be about 129 knots, which means that we're going to have pretty sufficient rotation in the upper levels. Again, largely uncapped here, just a little bit of capping. I think that's probably as a result of just some of the leftover remnant rain here. So again, generally speaking, though, this seems to be an environment favorable for supercells to development today. If we go back and look at the NAM 3 kilometer, this is the 12Z NAM 3 kilometer here. We'll let it kind of load up a bit. And you notice kind of some of the similar thing, couple of storms developing out here by 23Z. Not as vigorous on the models, but I think this is more of a situation where, again, you can't really look at the models to determine the exact severity of the situation today. I think that we're going to see large hail and damaging winds no matter what, and I do think that is reflected at least in some of the forecast guidance today. So generally speaking, with this being said, we have an extreme threat for thunderstorms today. Lightning is going to be, again, I mean, that's a threat with any storm, but that's going to be an extreme threat today. Given the numerous amounts of thunderstorms that are expected, we could see a large potential for that. There is that slight threat for a tornado or two, especially right near the coast, where you're aided by storm scale mergers and boundary interactions with outflow from other thunderstorms or that sea breeze. That might help to increase the tornado threat across a localized area. Wind threat, moderate threat there because, again, you could see some winds to near hurricane force and some of those stronger downbursts, and a high threat for hail, given that we could see some hail that tops out just near about 3 inches or potentially even greater in some of the more intense supercells. So again, generally speaking, we have a pretty significant risk for severe storms today, level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk. And again, we also have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So again, those are the two main concerns for today. I do plan to chase this event, so we'll probably be getting some good video to come from that probably sometime later tonight. Maybe live stream it if it's something that's worth live streaming. So with that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Make sure to stay safe, everyone. Have multiple ways to receive warnings. I am Mike O'Malley, and I'll talk to you guys again some more over the next coming days.